The chains cut deep. The border stretched endless. She was their sacrifice, but the Wolf King saw something they didn't. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. And if you want to see how Alara survives what's coming next, hit that like button and stick around until the very end. Trust me, you won't see this twist coming. The iron tasted like blood. Alara Voss had been chewing the inside of her cheek for the last 3 miles, trying to focus on something other than the shackles grinding her wrists raw. The chains were old, rusted in places, sharp in others, and they rattled with every stumbling step she took across the frozen ground. Her bare feet had gone numb an hour ago. She couldn't feel the stones anymore, just the occasional bright flare of pain when she stepped on something particularly jagged. Good. Pain meant she was still alive. Behind her, the escort from Silverpine Pack kept their distance. 6 wolves, all of them armed, none of them meeting her eyes. She recognized 2 of them, Garrett, who used to bring her wild herbs when she was younger, and Senna, who'd once asked Alara to heal her daughter's fever. Neither had spoken a word to her since they dragged her from the cellar 3 days ago. Alara didn't blame them. Fear had a way of making cowards of everyone. "Keep moving," one of the rear guards barked. His voice cracked on the second word. Young then, probably his first trade run. She didn't bother responding. What was there to say? Thanks for selling me to settle a debt I didn't create? I hope my life buys you another year of peace. The wind picked up, cutting through the thin excuse for a dress they'd given her. It wasn't mercy, it was practicality. Blackridge wouldn't want damaged goods, so they couldn't let her freeze to death before the handoff. But they also couldn't let her look too comfortable. That might suggest value, and Alara Voss had been made very clear on her value. 0. How much farther? Senna's voice drifted forward. She sounded tired. Another mile, maybe less. That was Garrett. He'd always been good with distances. They'll be waiting at the marker stones. Alara's stomach clenched. The marker stones. Neutral ground between Silverpine and Blackridge territories, where blood debts were settled and prisoners were exchanged. She'd heard stories about that place her whole life. None of them ended well. You think they'll actually take her? The young guard asked. They'll take her, Garrett said flatly. Ronan Kale doesn't break agreements. No, Alara thought. He just breaks people. Blackridge Pack. Even the name sounded like a threat. They were the wolves. Other wolves whispered about, brutal, unforgiving, led by a king who'd supposedly killed his own father to claim the throne. Their territory stretched across the northern frontier, a wasteland of black stone and frozen rivers where only the strongest survived. Mercy was a foreign concept. Weakness was a death sentence, and Alara was about to become their property. She focused on putting one foot in front of the other. The ground had started to slope upward, and she could see the dark shapes of the marker stones in the distance. 3 massive pillars of granite jutting from the earth like broken teeth. Beyond them, the landscape shifted. The scrubby pines of Silverpine territory gave way to something harsher, darker. Blackridge land. Even from here, it looked hostile. I can't do this, the young guard muttered. Shut up, Corin, Senna hissed. She's one of us. She's nothing. That was the lead guard, a grizzled wolf named Thane who'd made his feelings about Alara very clear from the start. She's a debt payment. That's all she's ever been. Alara's jaw tightened, but she didn't look back. Thane was right, in a way. Her parents had died owing Silverpine's Alpha a favor, something about a failed treaty, a broken promise. The details didn't matter. What mattered was that when her parents couldn't pay, the debt had transferred to her. And when Silverpine needed to appease Blackridge after a skirmish went wrong, someone had remembered the orphan girl with no family and no status. Perfect. They crested the hill, and Alara's breath caught. Blackridge wolves. There were at least 20 of them, arranged in a loose semicircle around the marker stones. They were bigger than Silverpine wolves, broader, scarred, armed to the teeth. Most wore dark leather and fur, and their faces were hard in a way that went beyond mere toughness. These were wolves who'd seen things, done things, and at the center of them stood a man who could only be Ronan Kale. He was taller than the others, with shoulders that looked like they could carry the weight of mountains. His hair was dark, pulled back from a face that was all sharp angles and brutal beauty, the kind of face that belonged on ancient coins or war memorials. He wore black from head to toe, and a long coat that moved like smoke in the wind. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Silver, cold, and fixed directly on her. Alara's heart slammed against her ribs. "That's far enough." Ronan's voice cut across the distance like a blade. Deep, controlled, carrying the kind of authority that didn't need volume. The Silver Pine escort halted immediately. Thane stepped forward, pulling a rolled parchment from his coat. "We bring payment for the debt owed. 1 life, as agreed in the Treaty of—" "I can read." Ronan's gaze hadn't left Alara. "Bring her forward." Garrett moved to obey, but Thane held up a hand. "The terms state inspection rights. We need verification that— now." The single word carried such weight that even Thane flinched. Garrett grabbed Alara's chains and pulled her forward, half dragging her down the slope toward the marker stones. She stumbled twice, caught herself, kept moving. The Blackridge wolves watched in silence. A few of them looked curious, most looked bored. She was nothing to them. Just another transaction. Garrett shoved her forward when they reached the stones, and Alara went to her knees on the frozen ground. The impact sent pain shooting up her legs, but she bit down hard and didn't make a sound. She'd be damned if she gave them that. Boots appeared in her line of vision, black leather, scuffed, but well made. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. Alara raised her head slowly, forcing herself to meet Ronan Kael's eyes. Up close, they were even more unsettling, not quite human, not quite wolf, something in between that made her skin prickle with instinctive wariness. He studied her with the same detached interest someone might give a horse at auction. Then something shifted. His eyes widened fractionally, barely noticeable, but Alara caught it. A muscle twitched in his jaw. For just a second, his carefully controlled expression cracked, revealing something underneath that looked almost like shock. Then it was gone. "Remove the chains," Ronan said quietly. Behind him, one of his wolves stepped forward, a massive man with a braided beard and kind eyes that seemed out of place on a Blackridge warrior. He knelt beside Alara and produced a key. "This might hurt," he murmured. The metals dug in pretty deep. The shackles fell away with a series of metallic clicks. Blood rushed back into Alara's hands, bringing a wave of pins and needles so intense she had to close her eyes. When she opened them again, Ronan was still staring at her. "Can you stand?" She nodded. "Then do it." Alara pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly. The world tilted, steadied. She locked her knees and faced him, chin up despite everything. If she was going to die here, she'd do it on her feet. Ronan's expression remained unreadable. "What's your name?" "Alara Voss." "And you are here to settle a blood debt owed by Silverpine Pack to Blackridge." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes." "Did you agree to this?" The question caught her off guard. Behind her, she heard Thane shift nervously. Alara's voice came out rough. She cleared her throat, tried again. "I wasn't given a choice." "That's not what I asked." She met his eyes. "No, I didn't agree." Silence stretched between them. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called out, the sound harsh and lonely. Ronan's gaze swept over her, taking in the torn dress, the bruises on her arms, the raw wounds on her wrists where the shackles had cut deep. His jaw tightened again. "She's half-starved," he said, still looking at her but clearly addressing Thane. "Injured, barely able to stand." The terms didn't specify condition. The terms specified a life. Ronan's voice dropped to something dangerous. "This is barely that." "She's alive," Thane protested. "That's all the treaty requires." Ronan finally turned to face the Silverpine wolves. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You bring me a broken girl in chains and call it payment?" "She's a healer," Thane said quickly. "Rare gift. Worth more than the scraps you fed her? Worth more than the cellar you kept her in?" Ronan took a step forward. Every Blackridge wolf behind him tensed, hands moving to weapons. "I know what you did to her. The whole frontier knows. You starved your own pack member and sold her like livestock." Thane's face went red. "We fulfilled the terms." "You fulfilled nothing." Ronan's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it worse. "You brought me a girl you've already destroyed and expected me to call it even." "Then refuse the trade," Thane shot back. "Break the treaty. See what happens when—" "I accept." The words fell like stones into water. Thane blinked. What? I accept the payment. Ronan's eyes cut back to Alara, and something flickered in their depths, something she couldn't name. The debt is settled. Alara Voss is now under Blackridge protection. Protection. The word sounded wrong coming from him. Thane looked like he wanted to argue, but he just nodded and backed away. Fine. She's yours. We're done here. The Silverpine wolves turned to leave, all of them except Garrett. He hesitated, looking at Alara with something that might have been regret. I'm sorry, he said softly. Then he was gone, following the others back over the hill and out of sight. Alara stood alone in front of Ronan Kael, surrounded by 20 armed Blackridge wolves waiting for whatever came next. Her legs shook, her hands throbbed, but she didn't move, didn't speak. Ronan watched her for a long moment. You're not what I expected, he said finally. Neither are you. His eyebrows rose fractionally. No? I expected cruelty. You're just... She trailed off, searching for the word. Controlled. Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. Give it time. He turned to the bearded wolf who'd removed her chains. Fenrir, get her to the healer's quarters. Food, water, clean clothes. Make sure she's comfortable. Comfortable. Another wrong word? Fenrir nodded. Yes, my king. Ronan started to walk away, then paused. And Fenrir? If anyone touches her, anyone looks at her wrong, bring them to me. Understood. Alara's mind raced. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to be thrown in a cell, or killed, or put to work until she dropped, not given quarters and protection. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Ronan looked back at her. For just a second, one brief, unguarded moment, she saw something raw in his expression, something almost like recognition. Because you're mine now, he said quietly, and I protect what's mine. Then he was gone, striding away across the frozen ground with his wolves falling into step behind him, all except Fenrir, who remained at Alara's side, waiting patiently. Can you walk? He asked. I think so. Good. It's not far. Here. He shrugged out of his heavy fur cloak and draped it around her shoulders. The weight of it was immediate and grounding. Better? Alara nodded, not trusting her voice. They walked in silence, following a narrow path that wound between black rocks and dead trees. The landscape here was harsh, all sharp edges and shadows, nothing soft or forgiving. But there was a strange beauty to it, too, in the way starlight caught on ice and the wind sang through stone. You're wondering why he didn't hurt you, Fenrir said after a while. Alara glanced at him. Aren't you going to tell me it's not my place to wonder? No. He smiled, and it transformed his whole face. I'm going to tell you that Ronan Kael is many things, but he's not the monster the frontier thinks he is. Then what is he? Fenrir's smile faded. That's the question, isn't it? They walked for another 20 minutes before the fortress came into view. Blackridge Keep rose from the landscape like it had been carved from a single piece of black stone, all hard lines and brutal architecture, designed to withstand siege and storm. Torches burned in iron sconces along the walls, casting long shadows that danced and twisted in the wind. Home. This was supposed to be her home now. The thought was absurd. Guards nodded to Fenrir as they passed through the main gate. Inside the fortress was warmer but no less imposing. Stone corridors stretched in every direction, lit by more torches and the occasional oil lamp. Wolves moved with purpose. Warriors in training gear, servants carrying supplies, children darting between adults with the kind of wild energy that transcended pack boundaries. Through here, Fenrir led her down a side corridor to a heavy wooden door. These are the healer's quarters. You'll have your own room, access to the medicine stores, and a workspace. He pushed the door open, revealing a space that took Alara's breath away. It was beautiful. Not in a grand way. There were no tapestries or fine furniture, but in its simplicity and function. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with herbs and supplies. A large table dominated the center of the room, covered with clean linen and surgical tools. Sunlight, actual sunlight, poured through tall windows, warming the stone floor. And in the back, through an open doorway, she could see a small bedroom with a real bed and blankets that looked clean and thick. This can't be for me, Alara whispered. It is. Fenrir moved to the shelves, pulling down jars and bundles with practiced ease. Our last healer died 6 months ago. We've been managing without, but he trailed off, shaking his head. It hasn't been easy. Alara walked to the center of the room, turning in a slow circle. Why do I get the feeling there's more you're not saying? Fenrir set down the herbs he'd been gathering and faced her. Blackridge isn't like other packs. Our culture is harsh. Pain is seen as strength. Weakness is death. Most wolves would rather bleed out than admit they need help. Then why keep a healer's quarters at all? Because Ronan insists on it. Fenrir's voice softened. He lost someone close to him once, someone who might have lived if we'd had a healer. Since then, he's maintained these quarters, kept them ready. Just in case. Just in case. Alara traced her fingers along the edge of the work table, feeling the smooth wood beneath her touch. And now I'm that just in case. Now you're a lot more than that. Fenrir moved toward the door. Rest, eat. I'll have food sent up within the hour. Tomorrow, you can start figuring out what comes next. He left before she could ask what he meant. Alara stood alone in the healer's quarters, surrounded by supplies and sunlight and the strange, impossible reality of her new life. She should have been terrified. Part of her was. But another part, a part she didn't want to examine too closely, felt something else entirely. Hope. It was a dangerous thing to feel. The food arrived exactly an hour later, carried by a young woman with nervous eyes and quick hands. She set the tray on the table, bobbed something that might have been a curtsy, and fled before Alara could thank her. Alara ate slowly, savoring every bite. Roasted meat, fresh bread, vegetables that actually had flavor. Real food, more than she'd seen in months. When she finished, she made her way to the bedroom and collapsed onto the bed. Sleep claimed her instantly. She woke to screaming. Alara bolted upright, heart pounding, momentarily disoriented. The room was dark except for moonlight streaming through the windows. Outside, the screaming continued, raw, agonized, the sound of someone in terrible pain. She was moving before she consciously decided to, grabbing a robe from the hook by the door and running barefoot into the corridor. The screaming was coming from somewhere below. She followed the sound down twisting stairs, through passages she didn't recognize, until she burst into what looked like a training yard. 20 wolves stood in a circle, watching. In the center, a young man, barely more than a boy, lay on the ground, his leg bent at an impossible angle. Blood pooled beneath him. His face was gray with shock. And standing over him, arms crossed, was a man who looked so much like Ronan that Alara's breath caught. Same height, same build, same sharp features. But where Ronan's eyes had been cold and controlled, this man's burned with something cruel. "Get up," the man said. The boy whimpered, "I can't. My leg." "Then you're weak," the man's voice carried across the yard. "And weakness has no place in Blackridge." Alara didn't think. She pushed through the circle of wolves and dropped to her knees beside the boy. Up close, she could see bone fragments pushing against the skin. Compound fracture. Bad one. "What are you doing?" The man's voice cracked like a whip. "Helping him." Alara placed her hands on either side of the break, feeling for the damage. There. She could sense it, the way the bone had shattered, the torn muscle and ligament. "He doesn't need help. He needs to learn. He needs a healer." The yard went silent. Alara closed her eyes and let her gift flow. It wasn't dramatic, no light, no sound, just a gentle warmth spreading from her palms into the boy's leg. She felt the bone fragments shift, realigning. The torn tissue began to knit. The bleeding slowed, stopped. When she opened her eyes, the boy's leg was straight. He stared at her like she'd performed a miracle. "Can you stand?" she asked quietly. He nodded, still too shocked to speak. With her help, he got to his feet, testing the leg cautiously. It held. Alara looked up at the man who'd been willing to let him suffer. "What's your name?" "Darius Kale." His eyes were flat, dangerous. "The king's brother." Of course he was. "Well, Darius Kyle," Alara said, rising to her full height, even though he towered over her, "in my world, we don't let people bleed out to prove a point. This isn't your world." He leaned in close, and she could smell smoke and violence on him. This is mine. And here, pain makes you stronger. No. Alara met his eyes without flinching. Pain just makes you hurt. For a moment she thought he might hit her. His hand twitched, his jaw clenched, but then footsteps echoed across the yard, and everyone turned. Ronan. He took in the scene with a single sweep of his eyes, the blood on the ground, the healed boy, Alara facing down his brother. Something flickered across his face, too quick to name. Darius, he said quietly. A word. It wasn't a request. Darius's jaw worked, but he nodded and followed Ronan to the far side of the yard. Alara couldn't hear what they said, but she saw the tension in both men's shoulders, the way Ronan's hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. The argument lasted less than a minute. Then Darius stormed off into the darkness, and Ronan approached Alara. You should be resting. I heard screaming. And you came running. Something that might have been approval crossed his face. That was brave. Also stupid. Stupid seems to be my specialty. The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Go back to your quarters. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we'll discuss your role here. I thought my role was to be a debt payment. That was yesterday. Ronan's eyes met hers, and for just a second she saw that same flash of recognition she'd glimpsed at the border. Tomorrow, you're something else entirely. He walked away before she could ask what he meant. Alara stood in the training yard surrounded by Blackridge wolves who were staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to respect to fear. She'd been here less than a day, and she'd already made enemies. But she'd also made a choice. Whatever came next, she wouldn't go quietly. She wouldn't be the broken girl they expected. She'd fight, not with claws or strength, but with the one gift she had. The ability to heal what others had given up on, even if it killed her. The next morning arrived with frost on the windows and blood under Alara's door. She found it when she stepped out of her quarters, a dark smear across the stone floor, still wet enough to glisten in the torchlight. Someone had been hurt here, recently, and no one had bothered to clean it up. Welcome to Blackridge. Alara followed the trail down the corridor, watching it fade from a thick streak to scattered droplets to nothing. Whoever had been bleeding had either stopped or died. Neither option was comforting. The fortress was already awake despite the early hour. Warriors moved through the halls with purpose, their boots echoing off stone. No one spoke. No one smiled. They just moved, grim-faced and silent, like soldiers marching to war. Maybe they were. Alara made her way to the main hall, drawn by the smell of food and the low rumble of voices. The space was massive, high ceilings supported by black stone pillars, long tables arranged in neat rows, a roaring fire at the far end that did almost nothing to warm the room. Wolves sat in clusters, eating quickly and efficiently. No lingering, no conversation beyond what was necessary. She spotted Fenrir near the fire and made her way over. "You're up early?" he said, sliding a plate toward her. "Couldn't sleep?" "Someone bled outside my door." Fenrir didn't even blink. "Training accident, probably. Darius runs dawn drills. They get rough. Rough enough to need a healer. Usually." He took a bite of bread, chewed thoughtfully. "But most won't come to you. Pride gets in the way." Alara picked at her food. The eggs were good, but her stomach felt tight. "How long has it been like this?" "Like what?" "This brutal." Fenrir set down his fork. "Always, since before Ronan took the throne. His father believed strength was everything, that mercy made you weak, kindness made you soft. Darius learned at his feet. When their father died and Ronan became king, everyone expected things to change." He paused. "They didn't." "Why not?" "Because Ronan carries his own demons." Fenrir's voice dropped. "And because Darius still holds too much power. He's captain of the guard, commander of the warriors. Half the pack answers to him before they answer to Ronan. That's a problem." "That's an understatement." A commotion near the entrance cut off whatever Alara might have said next. Wolves were entering in pairs and small groups, supporting injured packmates. She counted 6, all of them bleeding, limping, barely standing. Dawn drills. "I need to go," Alara said, already moving. Fenrir caught her arm. "Wait, you can't just watch me." She crossed the hall quickly, intercepting the first pair before they could disappear down a side corridor. Up close, the damage was worse than she'd thought. The warrior being supported had deep gashes across his chest, the kind that suggested claws. His breathing was shallow, labored. "Let me help," Ilara said. The uninjured wolf, a woman with scars across her face, shook her head. "We don't need—" "You're bleeding through your shirt," Ilara interrupted, looking at the woman's side where red was seeping through the fabric. "Both of you are hurt." "Let me help, or get out of my way so I can help someone else." The woman's eyes widened. For a moment, Ilara thought she'd refuse. Then she nodded once, sharp and quick. "Healer's quarters," Ilara said. "Can you make it?" "Yes." "Go. I'll be right behind you." She moved to the next pair, then the next, directing them all to her workspace. By the time she reached the last injured wolf, a young man with a dislocated shoulder and a face full of shame, the hall had gone quiet. Everyone was watching, including Darius. He stood near the fire, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Their eyes met across the room. Ilara lifted her chin, daring him to object. He smiled. It wasn't pleasant. Then he turned and walked away. Ilara didn't have time to worry about what that meant. She had patience waiting. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of blood and bone. Ilara worked methodically, treating each injury in order of severity. The warrior with the chest wounds came first. She had to repair internal damage before addressing the surface cuts. Then the woman with the side injury whose ribs had been cracked. Then the others. None of them spoke beyond what was necessary. They endured her touch with gritted teeth and rigid spines, as if accepting help was itself a kind of failure. "You can relax," Ilara told the young man with the dislocated shoulder as she positioned his arm. "This is going to hurt regardless of how tense you are. Pain makes you stronger," he said through clenched teeth. "Pain just makes you hurt." She pulled, feeling the joint pop back into place. He gasped but didn't cry out, and pretending otherwise doesn't make you brave. It just makes you stubborn. She felt the shoulder settle, knit the torn ligament, stepped back. "Test it." He rotated his arm cautiously. Full range of motion, no grinding, no pain. His eyes went wide. "How did you—" "Training," Ilara said simply. "Same as you trained to fight. I trained to heal. Now go get some rest. And next time Darius pushes you past your limit, remember you're allowed to say no." "I'm not." The young man's voice was quiet. "Refusing an order means punishment. Punishment means—" "I know what it means." Ilara cleaned her hands in the basin, watching pink water swirl down the drain. "But there's a difference between following orders and accepting abuse. Figure out which is which." He left without responding. Ilara worked through the morning and into the afternoon, treating a steady stream of injuries. Word had spread. There was a healer who didn't ask questions and didn't judge. Warriors started appearing at her door with wounds they'd been hiding for days, weeks. A broken finger that had healed wrong. A deep cut that had gotten infected. Burns from training accidents, sprains from overwork. She treated them all. By the time the sun started to set, Ilara's hands were shaking from exhaustion and her gift felt stretched thin. Healing took energy. Her energy. And she'd been pouring it out all day without stopping to replenish. "You need to rest," Fenrir's voice came from the doorway. Ilara looked up from the warrior whose ankle she was repairing. "I'm fine." "You're swaying on your feet." "I said I'm fine." Fenrir crossed the room and physically took her hands away from the patient. "You're done for today. Go eat. Sleep. Come back tomorrow." "But that's an order." His voice was gentle but firm. "From someone who outranks you." Ilara wanted to argue, but the room tilted slightly and she had to grab the table for support. Fine. Maybe he had a point. "Tomorrow," she told the warrior with the ankle. "Come back tomorrow, and I'll finish." He nodded, limped out. Ilara made it halfway to the door before her legs gave out. Fenrir caught her before she hit the ground, his arms solid and steady. "Easy. I've got you." "I just need food," Ilara mumbled. "I'm just tired." "You're depleted." He lifted her like she weighed nothing, carrying her toward the bedroom. "You gave too much. Your body's shutting down to protect itself." He set her on the bed, disappeared, returned with bread and dried meat and a water skin. Eat slowly, small bites. Alara forced herself to chew, to swallow. The food helped. After a few minutes, the shaking eased and the room stopped spinning. Better? Fenrir asked. Yeah. She drank deeply from the water skin. Thanks. You can't do this again, not like this. He sat on the edge of the bed, his expression serious. Healing that many people in one day, pushing your gift that hard. It'll kill you. I had to help them. I know, but you're no good to anyone dead. Fenrir ran a hand through his beard. Pace yourself, set limits, learn to say no. I don't know how to do that. Then learn fast. He stood, moved toward the door. Because Darius noticed what you did today, and when Darius notices something, it's never good. He left her alone with those words echoing in the darkness. Alara lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Her whole body ached, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from useful work. She'd helped people today, made a difference. For the first time since arriving at Blackridge, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she had a purpose beyond being a debt payment. Sleep came quickly. She woke to shouting. It was darker now, full night, judging by the stars visible through the window. The shouting was coming from somewhere close, angry voices overlapping in a way that suggested an argument on the verge of violence. Alara grabbed her robe and stepped into the corridor. 2 warriors stood outside her door, one of them holding the other back. The one being restrained was bleeding from a cut above his eye, and his face was twisted with rage. She has no right, he was yelling, no right to interfere. Calm down, Marcus. I earned those scars. I earned that pain, and she just took it away like it meant nothing. Alara's stomach dropped. She recognized him, one of the warriors she'd treated earlier, a man with old burn scars across his back that she'd healed without asking permission. Marcus. She stepped forward slowly, hands visible. I was trying to help. I didn't ask for help. His voice cracked. Those scars were mine, my proof that I survived, and you erased them. I thought you thought wrong. He jerked free from his friend's grip, got in her face. In Blackridge, scars are honor. They're strength. They're everything. And you just made me weak. Alara opened her mouth to respond, but a new voice cut through the tension. That's enough. Ronan. He appeared at the end of the corridor like a shadow-given form, moving with that same controlled grace she'd noticed at the border. The 2 warriors immediately stepped back, heads bowed. She dishonored me, Marcus said, but his voice had lost its edge. The code says, The code, Ronan interrupted quietly, says that challenging a member of the pack requires formal declaration. Did you make one? Marcus's jaw worked. No, my king. Then this conversation is over. Ronan's eyes flicked to Alara. Are you hurt? No. Good. He looked back at Marcus. You have 2 choices. Accept the healing and move forward, or come to me tomorrow and we'll discuss reassignment. But you don't threaten her. Clear? Clear. The warriors left. Ronan remained, studying Alara with that same unreadable expression. You can't heal everyone, he said finally. Why not? Because some people need their pain. He moved closer, and she caught the scent of smoke and leather. In Blackridge, scars tell stories. They're proof you survived something others didn't. Taking that away, even with good intentions, takes away part of who they are. That's insane. That's our culture. Ronan's voice was soft, almost gentle. And you're going to have to navigate it if you want to survive here. Alara felt anger flare hot in her chest. So what am I supposed to do? Let people suffer because suffering makes them feel strong. No, you're supposed to ask first. He paused. And you're supposed to understand that strength in Blackridge doesn't look like strength anywhere else. Here, enduring pain is survival. Showing weakness gets you killed. Then your culture is broken. The words were out before she could stop them. Alara braced for anger, for violence. Instead, Ronan's expression shifted into something almost like approval. Yes, he said quietly. It is. They stood in silence, the admission hanging between them like something fragile and dangerous. Why haven't you changed it? Alara asked. You're the king. Kings don't have as much power as you think. Ronan's jaw tightened, especially when half the pack still answers to someone else. Darius. He meant Darius. Then take that power back. It's not that simple. It never is. Alara crossed her arms. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. Ronan studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression that she couldn't quite name. You're braver than you know. I'm terrified. I know. That's what makes it brave. He turned to leave, then paused. The warriors you helped today, they'll remember. Some will resent you for it. But others, he trailed off. Others might start to wonder if there's another way. Is there? I don't know. Ronan's voice was barely above a whisper. But I'm starting to think you might show us. Then he was gone, leaving Alara alone in the corridor with more questions than answers. The days that followed settled into a pattern. Alara woke early, treated injuries, navigated the complicated politics of who wanted healing and who saw it as weakness. She learned to ask permission before touching anyone, learned to recognize the difference between someone who needed help and someone who needed to prove they could endure. It was exhausting. But slowly, something began to shift. The warriors who'd accepted her healing started coming back, not for treatment, but to talk, to ask questions, to sit in the healer's quarters and just exist in a space where pain wasn't glorified and weakness wasn't punished. Fenrir became a regular presence, helping her organize supplies and running interference when someone got aggressive. He taught her the names of herbs that grew in the northern territories, showed her how to make poultices that would work in freezing temperatures. You're good at this, he said one afternoon as they worked side by side, grinding dried roots into powder. At what? Creating spaces where people feel safe. He glanced at her. That's rarer than you think. Before Alara could respond, a child appeared in the doorway, a girl no older than 8 with dark hair and huge eyes. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, one arm held close to her chest. Alara was on her feet immediately. Hey, what's wrong? The girl hiccuped, tried to speak, couldn't. It's okay. Alara knelt down to the girl's level. I'm Alara. Can you show me where it hurts? The girl extended her arm slowly. The wrist was swollen, already turning purple. Broken, probably. But that wasn't what made Alara's blood run cold. There were other bruises. Old ones. Finger-shaped marks on the girl's upper arm. A fading black eye barely visible under carefully arranged hair. Who did this to you? Alara's voice came out harder than she intended. The girl flinched back. I'm sorry, I'm not angry at you. Alara softened her tone. But I need to know who hurt you. Training, the girl whispered. You're 8 years old. Commander Darius says we start young. The girl's voice was barely audible. Says pain makes us strong. Alara's vision went red around the edges. She took a slow breath, forced herself to focus. Okay, let me look at your wrist first. This might hurt a little, but I'll be as gentle as I can. She felt along the bone, confirming what she'd suspected. Clean break, recent. The healing was simple. She'd done it 100 times. But as her hands glowed with warmth and the bone knit itself back together, all Alara could think about was Darius standing over this child, teaching her that suffering was noble. There. She released the girl's wrist. How does that feel? The girl flexed her fingers, eyes wide. It doesn't hurt. Good. Alara stood, moved to the shelves. I'm going to make you something for the other bruises. A salve. It'll help them heal faster. I'm not supposed to use medicine. Why not? Commander Darius says it makes us soft. Commander Darius, Alara said carefully, isn't here, and I'm the healer, which means when it comes to injuries, I make the rules. Understand? The girl nodded slowly. Alara mixed the salve quickly, showing the girl how to apply it. Come back tomorrow. And if anyone hurts you again, you come straight to me. Clear? Yes, ma'am. The girl left, moving quieter than any child should. Fenrir was watching Alara with an expression that might have been concern. You're going to make an enemy. I already have one. Alara wiped her hands clean, but they were shaking. He's teaching children that pain is strength, that abuse is training. How is no one stopping this? Because it's always been this way. Because Ronan's trying to change things slowly, carefully, without starting a civil war, because everyone's too afraid to fight back. Alara cut him off. Well, I'm not. Alara, No. She turned to face him fully. I didn't survive Silverpine's cruelty just to watch it happen here. If Darius wants to make an enemy of me, fine. But I'm not backing down. Fenrir sighed. You're going to get yourself killed. Probably. And you're okay with that? Elara thought about the little girl with the broken wrist and the silent tears. About the warriors who hid their injuries because showing weakness meant punishment. About a culture so twisted that suffering had become sacred. I'm okay with trying, she said finally. That night, Elara couldn't sleep. She paced her quarters, mind racing, trying to figure out how to navigate a situation where doing the right thing might get her killed. Around midnight, she gave up and went for a walk. The fortress was quieter at night, but not empty. Guards patrolled the walls. Wolves moved through shadows on errands she couldn't guess. She wandered without direction, just trying to clear her head. She found herself in the training yard where she'd first confronted Darius. Someone was there. Ronan stood in the center of the space, shirtless despite the freezing temperature, moving through what looked like combat forms. His body was a map of scars, some old and faded, others newer. He moved with lethal precision, every strike controlled, every turn exact. Elara should have left. Instead, she stepped into the yard. Ronan stopped mid-movement, turned to face her. Can't sleep? Too much thinking. I know that feeling. He grabbed a shirt from the fence, pulled it on. What's bothering you? Your brother is training children to see abuse as strength. Ronan's expression went carefully blank. I know. And you're letting him? I'm trying to find a way to stop him that doesn't tear the pack apart. His voice was tight. You think I like what he's doing? You think I enjoy watching him twist everything our father taught us into something even worse? Then stop him. It's not that simple. The words came out sharper than Elara had ever heard from him. Half the warriors follow him because they believe what he's teaching. The other half are too afraid to object. If I move against him directly, we'll have a civil war. Wolves will die. Children will die. Everything I've been trying to build will collapse. So instead, you do nothing? I do what I can. Ronan's hands clenched at his sides. I change rules where I can. I protect who I can. I push back in ways that won't trigger a violent response. It's not enough, I know that. But it's all I have. Elara stepped closer. What if there was another way? What do you mean? What if we didn't fight Darius directly? What if we just offered an alternative? The idea was forming as she spoke. What if we showed the pack that strength doesn't have to mean suffering? That healing isn't weakness? That there's another way to survive? Ronan stared at her. You want to change the culture. I want to give people a choice. Elara met his eyes. Right now, Darius controls the narrative. Pain equals strength, mercy equals weakness. But what if we proved that wrong? What if we created a space where warriors could be strong and kind, where children could train without being broken? Darius would see it as a direct challenge. Let him. Elara felt something fierce rising in her chest. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of watching people suffer because no one will stand up to him. If he wants a fight, he can have one. He'll destroy you. Maybe. Elara smiled, and it felt dangerous. But I bet I can heal faster than he can hurt me. For a long moment, Ronan just looked at her. Then, slowly, something shifted in his expression, the careful control cracking to reveal something raw underneath. You're insane, he said. Probably. And brave, and reckless, and... He stopped, shook his head. I should forbid this. But you won't. No. His voice was quiet. Because you're right. We need another way. And if there's even a chance you can show us one. He trailed off. What do you need from me? Permission, protection, and a promise that you'll back me when Darius retaliates. You have all three. Ronan extended his hand. Elara took it. His palm was warm, calloused, steady. The moment their skin touched, she felt it again, that strange recognition, like something deep inside her knew him, recognized him. Thank you, she said. Ronan didn't let go. One condition. What? You don't do this alone. Fenrir will help you, so will others. Build your support before you make your move. Because when Darius realizes what you're doing, His grip tightened fractionally. He won't play fair. Neither will I. Something that might have been admiration flickered in Ronan's eyes. I believe you. They stood there in the training yard, hands clasped, an alliance forming between them that felt bigger than either of them had intended. Overhead, clouds shifted and moonlight spilled across the fortress, painting everything silver. Alara felt the weight of what she'd just committed to. The danger. The risk. The very real possibility that this would end with her death. But she also felt something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. I should let you sleep, Ronan said, but he still hadn't released her hand. You should. Neither of them moved. Then, from somewhere in the fortress, a bell tolled, deep and resonant. Ronan's head snapped up. What is that? Alara asked. Emergency signal. He was already moving toward the main building. Stay here. Not a chance. She followed him through corridors and downstairs, emerging into a large chamber filled with warriors. At the center stood Darius, and at his feet lay a body. Alara's breath caught. It was the young warrior from earlier, the one she'd told to question orders. His throat had been cut. Fresh blood pooled beneath him. Training accident, Darius announced to the assembled crowd. His voice was calm, almost bored. He overstepped, challenged authority. This is the consequence. You murdered him, Alara heard herself say. Every head turned. Darius's eyes found hers across the room. He smiled. I enforce discipline. There's a difference. He was barely 18 years old. Old enough to know better. Darius stepped over the body like it was nothing. Old enough to understand that in Blackridge, weakness is death. You should remember that, healer, before you forget your place. The threat was clear. The message unmistakable. This was what happened to wolves who questioned the order of things. Alara looked at Ronan. His face was stone, but his eyes burned with helpless fury. He couldn't move against Darius. Not here, not now, not without triggering the very war he was trying to prevent. But Alara could. She crossed the room slowly, deliberately, until she stood over the dead warrior. Then she knelt, placed her hands on his chest, and poured every ounce of her gift into him. What are you doing? Darius's voice had lost its casual tone. Alara didn't answer. She focused everything she had on the cooling body beneath her hands, the torn throat, the damaged vessels, the still heart. Bring him back, please, let me bring him back. Her gift flared hot and bright and desperate. The warrior gasped. His eyes flew open. Blood rushed back into his face. The wound in his throat sealed, healed, became nothing but a thin scar. Impossible. Alara had never brought someone back from death before. Didn't think she could. But here, in this moment, driven by rage and defiance and something she couldn't name, she'd done it. The warrior sat up, coughing, alive. The chamber erupted. Warriors surged forward, some trying to see the miracle, others backing away in fear. Darius stood frozen, his expression caught between fury and shock. And Ronan was staring at Alara like he'd never seen her before, like she was something terrifying and magnificent and completely beyond his understanding. Alara stood on shaking legs, her gift completely depleted, her body screaming in protest. She locked eyes with Darius across the chaos. In my world, she said clearly, loudly, we don't let people die to prove a point. Then her legs gave out and darkness swallowed her whole. She woke to firelight and voices arguing in hushed tones. Alara's eyes cracked open to find herself back in her quarters, tucked under heavy blankets that smelled like smoke and pine. Every muscle in her body screamed. Her head pounded like someone had taken a hammer to her skull. Even breathing hurt. Completely reckless, a familiar voice was saying. Fenrir. She could have died. But she didn't. That was Ronan, quieter but no less intense. She brought him back. Do you understand what that means? It means Darius will see her as a threat he can't ignore. He already saw her that way. Alara tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The room spun violently, and nausea rolled through her stomach. Don't move. Ronan was beside her instantly, one hand on her shoulder. You've been out for 2 days. 2. Her voice came out as a croak. The warrior, is he alive, healthy? Telling everyone who will listen that you brought him back from the dead. Ronan's expression was complicated. Half the pack thinks you're blessed. The other half thinks you're dangerous. Which half does Darius belong to? Both. Fenrir appeared on her other side, pressing a cup of water into her hands. Drink, slowly. Elara obeyed, feeling the liquid soothe her raw throat. What happened after I passed out? The two men exchanged glances. Chaos, Fenrir said finally. Warriors arguing about whether what you did was a miracle or a violation. Darius trying to spin it as dark magic. Ronan declaring you under royal protection. And then Darius challenged that protection. Ronan added, his voice tight. In front of everyone. Said that if you were truly under my authority, you should be subject to pack law, which means a trial. Alara's stomach dropped. Trial for what? Interfering with pack justice. Using forbidden magic. Take your pick. Ronan's jaw clenched. He's turning this into a power play. If I protect you, I'm undermining pack law. If I don't, he gets to punish you however he sees fit. When? Tomorrow night, full moon. The whole pack will witness. Fenrir's voice was grim. It's theater. Darius wants everyone to see what happens when someone challenges him. Elara set down the cup, her hand steadier than she felt. Then we give them a show. This isn't a game, Ronan snapped. If the trial goes against you, Darius can demand execution, and I won't be able to stop it without starting a war. I know. Elara met his eyes. But hiding won't help either. If I'm going to change things here, I need to face this head on. You're not strong enough. You can barely sit up. I have a day to get stronger. She pushed the blankets aside, ignoring the way her vision blurred. Help me or get out of my way. Ronan caught her before she could stand, his hands firm on her arms. Stop. Just stop. His voice was rough. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Why? The question came out almost desperate. Why are you so determined to fight a battle you can't win? Because I've spent my whole life being powerless, Elara wanted to say. Because I'm tired of watching cruelty go unchallenged. Because if I don't stand up now, I never will. Instead, she said simply, because someone has to. Something shifted in Ronan's expression, the control he wore like armor cracking just enough to show what lay beneath. Pain, exhaustion, and something that looked almost like hope. Then you're not doing it alone. He released her arms but didn't step back. Fenrir will help you prepare. I'll make sure the trial is conducted fairly. And if Darius tries anything, he will, Elara interrupted. We all know he will. Then we'll be ready. Ronan's eyes held hers. But you need to understand something. Tomorrow night, I can't show favoritism. I have to be impartial, which means I can't protect you the way I want to. I'm not asking you to. I know, but I'm going to anyway. His hand found hers, squeezed once. Just be careful. Then he was gone, leaving Elara alone with Fenrir and a day to prepare for something that might get her killed. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Fenrir drilled her on pack law, teaching her the protocols of a formal trial. The little girl with the broken wrist, whose name, Elara learned, was Mira, brought her food and water, refusing to leave even when Elara told her it wasn't safe. You helped me, Mira said stubbornly. Now I help you. Other wolves appeared throughout the day. Warriors she'd healed, bringing offerings, herbs, furs, small tokens of support. They didn't stay long, didn't say much, but their message was clear. She wasn't alone. But neither was Darius. As sunset approached, Elara could hear his supporters gathering in the main hall. Their voices carried through the stone corridors, loud, aggressive, demanding justice for what they called her crimes. They're working themselves into a frenzy, Fenrir observed, peering out the window. Darius has been feeding them stories all day, making you out to be some kind of dark witch who violated the natural order. Maybe I did. Elara was braiding her hair, trying to keep her hands busy. Bringing someone back from death, that's not natural. Neither is letting people die when you could save them. Fenrir turned from the window. You ready? No. Yes. Liar. But he smiled, sad and warm. Come on, it's time. The main hall had been transformed. Torches lined the walls, casting dramatic shadows across the gathered crowd. Every wolf in Blackridge seemed to be there, packed shoulder to shoulder, the air thick with tension and anticipation. A raised platform had been erected at the far end, where 3 chairs sat like thrones. Darius occupied the center chair, looking every inch the commander in his formal leathers and furs. To his left sat an older woman Alara didn't recognize. Severe face, calculating eyes. To his right, the chair remained empty. For Ronan. Alara walked down the center aisle, Fenrir at her side, feeling hundreds of eyes tracking her movement. Some looked curious, others hostile. A few, she caught sight of the warriors she'd healed, Mira clinging to someone's hand, looked hopeful. She reached the platform and stopped, keeping her spine straight and her chin high. Darius smiled down at her. Alara Voss, you stand accused of violating pack law. How do you plead? I'd like to hear the charges first. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Bold, the older woman remarked. I like that. Darius's smile didn't waver. The charges are simple. You interfered with lawful execution. You used forbidden magic to resurrect the dead. And you challenged pack authority in front of witnesses. He leaned forward. Each crime carries a penalty of death. Then it's a good thing I'm not guilty. The murmurs grew louder. You don't deny what you did? Darius asked. I deny that what I did was criminal, Alara's voice carried across the hall. I'm a healer. I heal people. That's not a crime. It's my purpose. You brought someone back from death. I brought someone back from murder. Alara turned to address the crowd directly. That warrior died because he questioned orders, because he dared to think for himself, and Commander Darius killed him for it. Lies. Darius was on his feet. He died in training. His throat was cut. Alara's voice was sharp. That's not training. That's execution. The hall erupted. Warriors shouted over each other, some supporting Darius, others demanding answers. Alara watched it unfold with grim satisfaction. She'd thrown the first stone. Now chaos would do the rest. Silence! The command came from the entrance. Ronan entered like a storm made flesh. He'd changed into formal attire, black and silver, a crown of twisted metal resting on his dark hair. He looked every inch the king, and the crowd fell quiet immediately. He took the empty chair without looking at Alara, his face carved from stone. Continue. Darius sat back down, but his composure was rattled. We were discussing the accused's crimes. I heard. Ronan's tone was neutral. Elder Morna, what does pack law say about healing magic? The older woman consulted a thick book in her lap. It's permitted, even encouraged, provided it doesn't violate the natural order. And resurrection? Falls into gray area. Morna's eyes gleamed. Some argue it violates natural order. Others argue it's the highest form of healing. Precedent could go either way. Convenient, Darius muttered. What about the charge of challenging authority? Ronan asked. That one's clearer, Morna said. If the accused openly defied a direct command from a superior, penalty is severe. But, she paused, if the command itself was unlawful, the accused had duty to resist. Alara felt a spark of hope. Morna was giving her an opening. The command to execute that warrior, Alara said quickly. Was it lawful? He challenged my authority, Darius shot back. Pack law is clear. Pack law says challenges must be formal, Morna interrupted, still consulting her book. Declaration witnessed, terms agreed upon. Was that done? Darius's jaw worked. The situation was fluid. That's not an answer. He was insubordinate. Still not an answer. Morna looked at Ronan. My king, I believe we need testimony from witnesses. Did anyone see what actually happened? Silence. Then, from the back of the hall, a voice. I did. Every head turned. The warrior Alara had resurrected stepped forward, young face pale but determined. I was there. I questioned whether Commander Darius's training methods were too harsh. That's all. I didn't challenge him formally. I just asked a question. And he killed you for it, Alara said softly. He would have. The warrior's voice strengthened. If you hadn't brought me back. The hall erupted again, louder this time. Warriors were arguing openly now, old divisions cracking wide. Alara saw it happening in real time, Darius's support fracturing, doubt spreading like poison. This is absurd. Darius was on his feet again. You're letting her manipulate you. She's dangerous. She's effective, Morna corrected. There's a difference. She violated every principle Blackridge stands for. Perhaps those principles need examining. The elder's voice was mild, but her words landed like bombs. I've been watching you, Darius Kale. Watching how you train warriors, how you treat children, how you confuse cruelty with strength. She closed her book with a snap. And I'm tired of it. Darius went very still. Careful, old woman. Or what? You'll kill me too? Morna laughed, sharp and bitter. I've lived through 5 kings. I'm not afraid of you. Ronan remained seated, his expression unreadable, but Alara caught the slight tension in his shoulders. He was letting this play out, letting Morna do what he couldn't. The trial is over, Morna announced. I find Alara Voss not guilty of all charges. Furthermore, I recommend investigation into Commander Darius's training practices and whether they violate... No! The single word from Darius cut through everything. He stood slowly, deliberately, and Alara's instincts screamed danger. No trial, no investigation, no more games. His eyes swept the crowd. You want to know what Blackridge stands for? I'll show you. He moved faster than should have been possible. One moment he was on the platform, the next he had Morna by the throat, lifting her off her feet. The old woman clawed at his hands, gasping. Darius, stop! Ronan was up, moving forward. Stay back. Darius's other hand produced a blade, pressed it to Morna's neck. Or she dies. The hall froze. You want to change, Blackridge? Darius addressed the crowd, his voice carrying. You want to make us soft? Weak? This is what happens. This is the price of mercy. Let her go, Ronan said, voice deadly calm. Now. Make me, brother, Darius smiled. Come on. Show them what you really are. Show them the beast. Alara saw it then, saw the trap. Darius was goading Ronan, trying to make him lose control. And if Ronan shifted, if he let whatever darkness he was fighting break free, he'd prove everything Darius had been saying. That strength was violence. That power meant cruelty. She had to do something. Wait. Alara stepped forward. Let her go and take me instead. Everyone stared. Alara, no. Fenrir grabbed for her, but she shook him off. That's what you want, isn't it? She addressed Darius directly. To prove I'm the problem. To show everyone what happens when someone challenges you. She moved closer. So take me. Let Morna go, and take me. Darius's eyes gleamed with something ugly. You'd trade yourself for her? Yes. Even knowing I'll kill you? Yes. For a moment, Darius seemed to consider it. Then he laughed, a sound devoid of humor. No, I don't think I will. He threw Morna aside like garbage. The old woman hit the ground hard, gasping. Before anyone could react, Darius was moving again, closing the distance to Alara in 2 strides. I'm going to do something better, he said, grabbing her arm in a grip that would leave bruises. I'm going to show you what Blackridge really is. He dragged her toward a side door, moving so fast Alara could barely keep her feet. Ronan shouted something. Warriors surged forward, but Darius was already through the doorway, pulling her down a corridor she didn't recognize. Where are we going? Alara tried to dig in her heels, but he was too strong. Somewhere special. Darius's voice was pleasant now, conversational. Somewhere no one goes anymore. The old tunnels beneath the fortress. You know what they used to use them for? Alara's blood ran cold. Executions, Darius continued, back when Blackridge had proper order, before my brother went soft. He shoved through another door and suddenly they were descending stone steps into darkness. But they're perfect for other things too, private things. They'll come for me, Alara said, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. I'm counting on it. Darius pulled her deeper into the tunnels, especially Ronan. See, my brother has this problem. He cares too much, gets attached, and when people he cares about are threatened, he glanced back at her. Well, that's when the beast comes out. Understanding crashed over Alara. You're using me as bait, smart girl. Darius pulled her around a corner into a large chamber lit by old torches. I've been trying to trigger him for years, but he's too controlled, too careful, never lets the darkness out where anyone can see. He shoved Alara against the wall. But for you, he'll break. I saw how he looked at you. Whatever's between you two, it's strong enough to make him stupid. You're insane. I'm practical. Darius produced rope from somewhere, began tying her wrists. When Ronan comes, and he will, I'll push him until that beast takes over. And when it does, when everyone sees what he really is, they'll beg me to take the throne. Problem solved. Alara tried to fight, but he was too strong, too skilled. Within seconds, she was bound to an old iron ring set into the wall, arms stretched above her head. Comfortable? Darius asked. Go to hell. Already there. He stepped back, examining his work. Now we wait. They didn't have to wait long. Footsteps echoed in the tunnels, running, urgent. Then Ronan burst into the chamber, Fenrir and a dozen warriors behind him. Let her go, Ronan said. His voice was too calm, dangerously calm. Or what? Darius spread his hands. You'll make me? Darius, this is between us. Leave her out of it. But she's the best part. Darius moved to Alara, trailed one finger down her cheek. She jerked away, and he laughed. See? She already knows what you really are, what you're capable of. Don't. Ronan's hands were clenched so tight Alara could see them shaking. Don't touch her. Why not? Darius's hand moved to Alara's throat. What are you going to do about it? Ronan took a step forward, and Alara saw it, saw something shift behind his eyes, something dark and primal and barely contained. Ronan, don't, she managed. It's a trap. Darius's hand tightened on her throat, cutting off her words. And Ronan snapped. The change wasn't dramatic. No transformation, no sudden shift. But everything about him became more dangerous, more predatory, more other. His eyes went pure silver. The air around him seemed to darken. Let her go. Each word was a growl. Darius smiled. There he is. There's the beast. He released Alara's throat and drew a blade, wickedly curved, the edge gleaming in the torchlight. Come on, brother. Show them what you really are. Ronan moved. What followed was less a fight than a disaster. Ronan was faster than he should have been, stronger, driven by something beyond rage. He hit Darius like a battering ram, and the two of them went down in a tangle of violence. The warriors who'd come with Ronan tried to intervene, but Fenrir held them back. Don't. If you get between them now, you'll die. Alara pulled against her restraints, panic clawing at her chest. This was exactly what Darius wanted. Ronan was losing control, and everyone was seeing it happen. Stop, she shouted. Ronan, stop! He didn't hear her, or couldn't. He had Darius pinned now, hands around his brother's throat, squeezing. Darius was laughing even as his face turned purple. That's it, Darius choked out. Kill me. Show them you're just like our father. Show them you're the monster. He struck upward with the blade he'd been hiding. The poison-coated steel drove deep into Ronan's side. Everything stopped. Ronan's eyes went wide. He released Darius, stumbled back, looked down at the blade protruding from his ribs. Nightshade oil, Darius said, getting to his feet, mixed with silver dust, specifically designed to kill wolves, specifically designed to kill you. He pulled the blade out with a wet sound, and Ronan collapsed. No! Alara pulled so hard against her restraints that her wrists bled. No, no, no! Darius wiped the blade on his sleeve, looking almost regretful. I didn't want it to end like this. I wanted them to see you lose control. But this works too. He addressed the watching warriors. Witness, I defended myself against the Beast King. He attacked me, and I had no choice. Liar! Fenrir's voice was raw. You provoked him. You poisoned him. Prove it. Darius sheathed the blade. The poison will work fast. In a few minutes, he'll be dead, and I'll be king. And Blackridge will return to what it was meant to be. Alara watched Ronan convulse on the ground, watched his skin turn gray as the poison spread. She could feel it from here, could sense his body shutting down, systems failing one by one. And beneath it, something else, something massive and dark and wrong, rising up as Ronan's control shattered. The beast. It was trying to break free. And if it did, if it took over while Ronan was dying, it would destroy everything, everyone, including Ronan himself. Untie me, Alara said. What? Fenrir stared at her. Untie me now or we all die. Something in her voice must have convinced him. Fenrir rushed forward, cutting through the ropes with his knife. Alara's arms dropped, numb and useless. She forced them to move, crawling to where Ronan lay. Up close, it was worse. His eyes were unfocused, his breathing shallow. Black veins spread from the wound like cracks in ice, and underneath his skin something moved. Ronan. She put her hands on his face. Can you hear me? His eyes found hers. For just a second, he was there, present, aware. Then the darkness swallowed him again. I'm going in, Alara said to no one in particular. Into his mind. I'm going to try to... That's suicide, Fenrir interrupted. If the beast is awake, it'll kill you. It'll kill him if I don't try. Alara placed her hands on Ronan's chest, feeling his heart race and stutter beneath her palms. Keep everyone back. No matter what happens, don't let them interfere. Alara, promise me. Fenrir's jaw worked. I promise. Alara closed her eyes and dove. The mental landscape was chaos. She found herself in darkness so complete it felt solid. Somewhere ahead, she could hear breathing, massive, labored, and human, and beneath that, a heartbeat like thunder. Ronan? Her voice echoed strangely. The breathing stopped. Then something moved in the darkness, something huge enough that Alara felt it displace air. She forced herself to stand still, to not run. I'm not here to fight you, she said to the darkness. I'm here to help. A growl answered her, low, dangerous, the sound of a predator that had never known mercy. I know you're scared, Alara continued. I know you think you're protecting him, but you're not. You're killing him. The darkness shifted. For just a moment, she caught a glimpse of what lived here. Something ancient and primal, all teeth and rage and survival instinct. It wasn't evil. It was terrified. You don't have to be alone, Alara whispered. You don't have to carry this by yourself. Another growl, but quieter now. Uncertain. Alara took a step forward into the darkness, then another. Her gift flared warm in her chest, not attacking, just present, offering. Let me help you, she said. Let me help both of you. The beast emerged from the shadows. It was massive, wolf-shaped but wrong, too large, too sharp, made of nightmare and fear. Its eyes burned silver and its teeth could have torn her apart. Alara didn't run. She walked toward it, hands out, showing she had no weapons. I see you, she said. I see what you are. Not a monster, just something trying to survive. The beast lowered its head, bringing those burning eyes level with hers. And Alara understood. This wasn't some separate entity. This was Ronan. The part of him he'd been taught to hate, to hide, to fear. All his darkness, his rage, his grief, shaped into something he could barely control. It wasn't trying to destroy him. It was trying to keep him alive the only way it knew how, through violence. You don't have to fight anymore, Alara said gently. She placed one hand on the beast's massive head. You can rest. I've got him. The beast shuddered beneath her touch. Then, slowly, impossibly, it began to shrink. The teeth receded, the eyes dimmed. The darkness pulled back, condensing, reorganizing, becoming part of Ronan instead of something separate. Alara felt the moment it happened, felt the beast and the man merge, become whole, become balanced. The poison was still there, still killing him, but now she could fight it. Now she had a chance. She poured everything she had into healing him. The poison fought back, burning and toxic, but she was stronger. She found every drop, every trace, and neutralized it, repaired the damage to his organs, knit torn tissue, brought his heart back to steady rhythm. When she finally pulled back, gasping, Ronan's eyes were open, and they were his own. She was back in the physical world, sprawled across his chest, her hands still glowing faintly with warmth. Around them, the chamber was silent. Ronan stared up at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, his expression was completely unguarded. What did you do? He whispered. Saved you. That's not... He stopped, seemed to search for words. I felt you. Inside my head. You touched the beast and it didn't hurt me because it's not a beast. Alara's voice was rough with exhaustion. It's you. It's always been you. Just the parts you were afraid of. Ronan's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. How are you real? Before Alara could answer, Darius's voice cut through the moment. Touching, really. He was standing now, blade in hand again, looking at them with disgust. But it changes nothing. You're both still going to die. Ronan was on his feet so fast Alara barely saw him move, but this time there was no loss of control, no beast taking over. Just Ronan, whole, balanced, dangerous in a completely controlled way. You tried to kill me, he said calmly. You used poison. You manipulated her. You've been undermining me for years. He took a step forward. And I'm done. Darius backed up, suddenly looking uncertain. Brother, don't call me that. Ronan's voice was quiet, deadly. You stopped being my brother the day you chose fear over family. He moved. This fight was different. No wild rage, no loss of control, just precision. Ronan disarmed Darius in 3 moves, had him on the ground in 5. The blade clattered across the floor. You could have been better, Ronan said, looking down at his brother. You could have chosen differently. I did choose. Darius spat blood. I chose strength. No, you chose cruelty. Ronan's expression was almost sad. And that ends now. He looked up at the gathered warriors. Darius Kyle is stripped of rank and exiled from Blackridge. If he returns, he dies. Anyone who follows him goes with him. Silence. Then Fenrir stepped forward. I stand with my king. Another warrior joined him, then another. Within moments, every wolf in the chamber had made their choice, and none of them chose Darius. Ronan hauled his brother to his feet. You have until dawn to leave. After that, you're prey. Darius's face twisted with rage and humiliation. This isn't over. Yes, Ronan said quietly. It is. Fenrir and 2 others dragged Darius away, still fighting and cursing. The other warriors followed, leaving Ronan and Ilara alone in the old execution chamber. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Ronan turned to her, and the look on his face made Ilara's breath catch. You went into my mind, he said. No one's ever done that before. I had to save you. You could have died. I know. And you did it anyway. He stepped closer. Why? Because you're worth saving, Ilara wanted to say. Because despite everything, you're trying to be better. Because when I touch you, something in me recognizes something in you. Instead, she said, because someone has to stand up to the darkness. Might as well be me. Ronan's hand found hers, and Ilara felt it again. That recognition, that pull, stronger than before now that nothing stood between them. I felt you, he repeated. Inside my mind. You saw everything, all the worst parts of me. And you didn't run. Why would I? Ilara squeezed his hand. I've got plenty of darkness in me too. His thumb traced circles on her palm. What happens now? Now? Ilara smiled, exhausted and exhilarated and terrified. Now we change everything. The fortress felt different in the morning light. Ilara stood at the window of her quarters, watching the sun climb over the black stone walls. Below, the training yard was already full, but the sounds were different, less harsh, fewer screams. Warriors still sparred, still pushed themselves, but there was something else now. Laughter, actual conversation, small moments of humanity breaking through the iron discipline. 3 weeks since Darius's exile. 3 weeks of slow, careful change. It wasn't easy, nothing worth doing ever was. You're up early, Ronan's voice came from the doorway. Ilara didn't turn, but she smiled. Couldn't sleep. Bad dreams? Good ones, actually. She glanced back at him. That's what's keeping me awake. He crossed the room to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. They'd been doing this dance for weeks now, circling each other, drawn together, but never quite closing the distance. Too much uncertainty, too much at stake. The council meeting is in an hour, Ronan said. You ready? No? Ilara finally turned to face him. But I'll do it anyway. His expression softened. You don't have to. I can present the reforms myself. And have them dismissed as the Soft King's latest failure? She shook her head. No, this has to come from both of us. Show them we're united. We are united. The words came out quiet, weighted with meaning beyond politics. Ilara's breath caught. They stood there in the morning light, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. Then footsteps in the corridor broke the moment. Fenrir appeared, looking harried. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" Ronan's tone shifted immediately to command mode. "The kind where 3 packs showed up at our border demanding to know if the rumors are true." Alara's stomach dropped. "What rumors?" "That Blackridge has gone soft. That we're harboring a witch who's corrupting our warriors. That our king is—" Fenrir hesitated. "Say it," Ronan ordered. "That our king is compromised, controlled by dark magic." Fenrir looked apologetic. "Darius has been spreading stories, turning the frontier against us." Of course he had. "How many warriors do they have?" Ronan asked. 50. Maybe more. They're calling for a demonstration of strength. Meaning they want us to prove we're still Blackridge. Ronan's jaw tightened. Which means blood, violence, like everything we're trying to move past. Or, Alara said slowly, it means we show them something they've never seen before. Both men looked at her. "What are you thinking?" Ronan asked. "I'm thinking we give them their demonstration, just not the one they're expecting." An idea was forming, dangerous and possibly stupid. "How many of our warriors have I treated in the last 3 weeks?" Fenrir frowned. "Most of them. At least 60, maybe 70. "And how many came back after? Not for healing, just to be there." "All of them." Fenrir's expression shifted to understanding. "You want to show the other packs what we've become." "I want to show them what strength actually looks like." Alara turned to Ronan. "Not the ability to endure pain, not the willingness to inflict it, but the courage to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to heal instead of break." Ronan stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "That's either brilliant or suicidal. Can't it be both? With you, it usually is." He was already moving toward the door. "Fenrir, gather everyone in the main yard. All of them. Warriors, healers, children, everyone." "What should I tell them?" "Tell them," Ronan said, "that we're about to redefine what Blackridge means." An hour later, the entire pack stood assembled, while 3 foreign delegations watched from the fortress walls. Alara recognized the banners, Ironpaw, Stormcrest, and Shadowfen, all of them larger packs, all of them traditional, all of them deeply invested in the old ways, and all of them looking for any excuse to declare Blackridge weak. Alara stood on a raised platform beside Ronan, very aware of every eye on her. She'd dressed simply, healer's robes, no weapons, nothing to suggest power beyond what she carried in her hands. Ronan, by contrast, looked every inch the warrior king, but when he spoke, his voice carried not aggression, but certainty. 3 weeks ago, my brother tried to kill me. He used poison. He manipulated, lied, and nearly destroyed everything I've been trying to build. Ronan's gaze swept the assembled wolves. Some of you supported him. Some of you believed his vision of strength was the only way to survive. Silence. No one moved. But Darius was wrong. And so was our father before him. And so was every king who taught us that pain equals power, that mercy equals weakness, that the only way to survive is to destroy anything soft inside us. "Pretty words," a voice called from the Ironpaw delegation. "But words don't hold territory. Strength does." "You're right," Ronan nodded. "So let me show you strength." He turned to Alara. "Go ahead." This was it. The moment that would either prove their point or destroy any credibility they'd built. Alara stepped forward. 3 weeks ago, I was a debt payment. Expendable. Worthless. I expected to die here. Her voice carried across the yard. Instead, I found wolves who were hurting. Warriors carrying injuries they'd hidden for months, years. Children being trained past their breaking points. An entire culture bleeding from wounds it refused to acknowledge. She descended from the platform, walking among her packmates. So I started healing them, not just their bodies, their spirits. I created a space where it was okay to admit you needed help, where asking for healing wasn't shameful, where strength meant knowing your limits, not ignoring them. Alara stopped in front of a massive warrior, one of the first she'd treated. "Tell them what happened." The warrior hesitated, then spoke. "I had 3 cracked ribs and a torn shoulder. Been fighting through it for 2 months because admitting injury meant reassignment. meant being seen as weak. His voice roughened. The pain got so bad I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, but I kept pushing because that's what we do in Blackridge. And then? Alara prompted. And then you fixed me in 20 minutes. The warrior looked at her with something like awe. Just fixed me, like it was nothing. And when I tried to thank you, you said I deserved to not hurt, that surviving wasn't the same as thriving. Murmurs rippled through the watching packs. Alara moved to another wolf, the young man whose shoulder she'd relocated. Your turn. I was terrified of you at first, he admitted. Thought healing was weakness. Thought accepting help meant I'd failed. He paused. But then I realized something. The strongest warrior isn't the one who can take the most damage. It's the one who knows when to stop taking damage and start fixing it. More murmurs, louder now. This is absurd, someone from Stormcrest shouted. You're teaching them to be soft. No, Ronan's voice cut through the noise. We're teaching them to be smart, to be sustainable, to build warriors who last decades instead of burning out in years. And how's that working? The Stormcrest representative challenged. Are your warriors weaker now, less capable? See for yourself. Ronan gestured to the training yard. Fenrir demonstration. What followed was the most impressive sparring session Alara had ever witnessed. Warriors moving with precision and power, pushing each other hard but not recklessly. When someone took a hit that looked bad, they called pause, got checked, then continued. No one hid injuries. No one fought through obvious damage just to prove a point. And somehow, impossibly, they were better for it. Faster, sharper, more focused. Because they weren't afraid. Your warriors look healthy, the Iron Paw leader admitted grudgingly. I'll give you that. But strength isn't just physical. It's mental, cultural. You've disrupted everything Blackridge stood for. Good, Alara said before Ronan could respond. Because what Blackridge stood for was slowly killing everyone in it. She walked to the center of the yard, addressing all three delegations directly. You want to know if the rumors are true? Yes, Blackridge has changed. We still train hard. We still produce some of the fiercest warriors on the frontier, but now we do it without destroying ourselves in the process. And you expect us to believe this makes you stronger? The Shadowfen representative sounded skeptical. I expect you to believe your own eyes. Alara gestured to the assembled pack. Look at them. Really look. Do they seem weak to you? Or do they seem like wolves who've finally figured out how to be both powerful and whole? The Shadowfen leader studied the crowd for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. I'll be damned. You actually did it. Did what? Ronan asked. Figured out what the rest of us have been too stubborn to admit. She descended from the wall, approaching the platform. That the old ways are breaking us. That we're losing warriors to injury, burnout, despair. That something has to change. She extended her hand to Ronan. Shadowfen would like to propose an alliance. Not based on fear or dominance, but mutual support. We share your healer's methods, you share your training innovations. Ronan took her hand, but his expression remained cautious. An Iron Paw? Stormcrest? The Iron Paw leader snorted. You've gone soft, no question. But, he paused. My daughter's been hiding a leg injury for 6 months. If your healer can fix it without the ritual scarring and pain trials, I'm willing to reconsider my position. Send her tomorrow, Alara said immediately. No trials, no scarring, just healing. Stormcrest remained silent, their representative's face carved from stone. Then he turned and left without a word. 2 out of 3, Fenrir murmured. Not bad. Stormcrest will come around, the Shadowfen leader said. Or they won't. Either way, change is coming to the frontier. Better to be ahead of it than crushed by it. The delegations departed an hour later, leaving Blackridge Pack alone in the yard. For a moment, no one spoke. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire pack was cheering. Alara felt tears prick her eyes. They'd done it. Actually done it. Speech, Fenrir called out. The healer should say something. No, Alara started, but Ronan was already guiding her back to the platform. Go on, he murmured. They need to hear from you. Alara looked out at the sea of faces. Warriors she'd healed. Children she'd helped. Wolves who'd trusted her when trust was the hardest thing to give. I don't have a grand speech, she said finally. I'm not a warrior or a leader. I'm just someone who saw people hurting and wanted to help. She paused. But here's what I've learned in the last 3 weeks. Strength isn't about how much pain you can endure. It's about how much you can overcome. It's about building something better instead of just surviving something terrible. She found Ronan's eyes in the crowd. And it's about having the courage to let people see you, all of you, the broken parts, the scared parts, the parts you've been taught to hide. Because that's where real connection happens. That's where real strength is born. The applause was deafening. Later, after the celebrations had died down and the pack had dispersed, Alara found herself back in the healer's quarters. She was organizing supplies, a nervous habit, when Ronan appeared in the doorway. "You were amazing today," he said. "We were amazing." Alara set down the herbs she'd been sorting. "I couldn't have done it without you backing me. I couldn't have imagined it without you showing me it was possible." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Alara, we need to talk." Her heart kicked against her ribs. About? About what happens next, about... He stopped, seeming to search for words. About us. There it was, the conversation they'd been avoiding for weeks. "What about us?" Alara asked, even though she knew, had known since the moment in the tunnels when she'd touched his mind and felt something click into place. "You know what?" Ronan crossed the space between them. "I've tried to stay professional, to keep distance. But every time I'm near you, I feel like something recognizes something," Alara finished. "Yes." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "The mate bond. I felt it the moment I saw you at the border. Tried to ignore it, tried to fight it, but why fight it? Because you deserved a choice." His voice was rough. "You were traded to me, given to me like property. I didn't want the bond to be another chain." Alara's chest tightened. "And if I choose you anyway? Then I'd be the luckiest bastard on the frontier." His other hand found her waist, drawing her closer. "But you need to understand what you'd be choosing. I'm not easy. I carry darkness. And even with your help, even with the beast integrated, I'm still someone trying to be better," Alara interrupted. "Still someone who chooses compassion over cruelty. Still someone who sees me as an equal instead of property." She placed her hands on his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palms. "That's what I'm choosing, Ronan. Not some perfect fantasy, just you." His forehead dropped to rest against hers. "I don't deserve you." "Good thing I'm not asking permission." He laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. Then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, it was desperate and claiming and full of 3 weeks of restrained wanting. Alara kissed him back just as fiercely, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had gone silver. "The bond is settling," he said, voice gravelly. "Can you feel it?" She could. Like a golden thread connecting them, warm and alive and unbreakable. "Yes." "It'll get stronger, more intense. Eventually, we'll be able to feel each other's emotions, sense each other across distance." His hands tightened on her waist. "Are you sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Ronan kissed her again, slower this time, savoring. When he pulled back, his expression was soft in a way she'd never seen. "Then you're mine, and I'm yours, for as long as you'll have me. That might be a while." "Good." He traced her jaw with gentle fingers. "Because I'm not letting you go." They stood there in the healer's quarters, wrapped around each other, while outside the fortress walls the sun set and the moon rose. The bond between them pulsed warm and steady, a promise of something neither had expected but both desperately needed. The next morning brought new challenges. Word had spread across the frontier about Blackridge's transformation, and reactions were mixed. Some packs sent envoys seeking alliances. Others sent threats. Darius reportedly was gathering supporters for some kind of retaliation. But inside Blackridge, changes continued. The training yards were reorganized to include healing stations. Warriors were encouraged to report injuries immediately rather than hide them. Children's training was restructured to build strength without breaking spirits. And Alara's healer's quarters became the heart of it all, a place where wolves came not just for physical healing, but for the quiet acknowledgement that pain wasn't weakness, that needing help was human. Well, wolf, whatever. "We need more healers," Alara told Ronan one evening as they reviewed the day's injuries. I can't keep up with demand. I've been thinking about that. Ronan set down the report he'd been reading. What if we started training them? Not everyone has your gift, but basic healing knowledge. That could be taught. A healer corps. Alara felt excitement kindle in her chest. Warriors who can also heal, wolves who understand both sides. Exactly. He pulled her into his lap, and she went willingly, settling against his chest. We could make it part of standard training. Every warrior learns basic medicine, field healing, triage. Darius would have called that weakness. Darius was an idiot. Ronan's arms tightened around her. This is practical. Warriors who can heal themselves and each other last longer. Fight better. Build loyalty that goes beyond fear. Alara twisted to look at him. You've really thought this through. I've had good inspiration. He kissed her temple. Plus, watching you work has taught me something. Healing isn't passive. It takes strength, skill, courage, all the things we value in warriors. Are you saying I'm a warrior? I'm saying you're the strongest person I know. His voice was serious. You came into an enemy fortress with nothing but your gift and your stubbornness, and you changed everything. That's not weakness, Alara. That's power. She didn't know what to say to that, so she kissed him instead. They were still tangled together when Fenrir knocked on the door. Sorry to interrupt, he called, but we have visitors, the kind you're going to want to see. Ronan groaned but released Alara. This better be good. It was. In the main hall stood a delegation from Silverpine, Alara's former pack, the wolves who'd sold her. Her blood ran cold. At the head of the delegation was Alpha Thane, older, grayer, but with the same cold eyes that had looked at her like property 3 months ago. Ronan Kyle, Thane said formally. We come seeking audience. You come seeking something, Ronan corrected, his tone icy. What? Thane's gaze found Alara. Something flickered in his expression. We come to retrieve what was ours. The debt is settled. The contract complete. We want Alara Voss returned. The hall went deadly silent. Alara felt rage and fear war in her chest. They wanted her back. After everything they'd done, everything they'd put her through, they wanted her back. No. Ronan's voice was flat. Final. The contract stated a life for a debt. The life was given. The debt was paid. Ronan stepped forward, and every wolf in the hall tensed. Alara Voss belongs to Blackridge now. She's under my protection. Under my... He paused, significant. Claim. Thane's eyes widened. The mate bond. Yes. You bonded with a debt payment? Thane sounded incredulous. I bonded with the strongest, bravest, most extraordinary wolf I've ever met. Ronan's hand found Alara's, squeezed. And if you think I'm giving her up, you're insane. We didn't come to fight, Thane said quickly. We came to renegotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. Please. The word seemed to cost Thane dearly. Just hear us out. Ronan looked at Alara. Your call. She wanted to say no. Wanted to throw them out, make them feel even a fraction of the helplessness they'd made her feel, but something in Thane's expression stopped her. Not remorse exactly, but something close to it. 5 minutes, she said. Thane nodded. Silverpine is dying. Half our pack has left in the last 2 months. The other half is barely holding on. We're losing warriors to injuries we can't treat, losing children to training methods that break more than they build. He paused. Word reached us about what you've done here, about the changes, and we want that. You want me to come back and fix your pack? Alara couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. After you starved me, chained me, and sold me? I know what we did was wrong. Thane's voice was quiet. I know we don't deserve your help, but our pack is full of wolves who had nothing to do with those decisions. Children, families. They shouldn't suffer because their leaders were cowards. He's right, Fenrir murmured, as much as I hate to admit it. Alara looked at Ronan. Through the bond, she felt his steady support, his willingness to back whatever she decided. I'll help you, she said finally, but not the way you want. Thane frowned. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not coming back to Silverpine. I'm staying here, with my mate, with my pack. Alara's voice strengthened. But I'll send healers. I'll share knowledge. I'll help you build something better. On one condition. Name it. You dismantle the debt system. No more selling pack members to settle obligations. No more treating wolves like currency. Alara stepped forward, and Thane actually backed up. You build a culture where every life has value, where asking for help isn't shameful, where strength means lifting each other up instead of tearing each other down. That's a complete restructuring. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. Thane looked at his delegation. Quiet conversations happened in whispers. Then he turned back to Alara. We'll take it. He extended his hand. And we're sorry. For what we did to you. For all of it. Alara didn't take his hand. I don't forgive you. I might never forgive you. But I won't let innocent wolves suffer because of your mistakes. She paused. Send a delegation in 2 weeks. We'll start the training then. Thane withdrew his hand, nodded, and led his wolves out. When they were gone, Alara sagged against Ronan. Did that actually just happen? You just negotiated a cultural revolution in your former pack while refusing to forgive the bastards who hurt you. Ronan sounded impressed. Yes, it happened, and it was magnificent. I feel like I'm going to be sick. That's normal. He turned her to face him. You realize what you just did? What this means? That I'm an idiot who can't say no to people who need help? That you're starting a movement. Ronan's eyes were bright. Blackridge changed. Now Silverpine will change. And when other packs see it working, they'll want to change too. You're reshaping the entire frontier. The weight of it hit Alara all at once. She'd come here expecting to die. Instead, she was changing the world. I can't do this alone, she whispered. Good thing you don't have to. Ronan pulled her close, and through the bond she felt his absolute certainty, his faith in her. We do this together, you, me, Fenrir, everyone who believes there's a better way. What if we fail? Then we fail trying to build something beautiful instead of maintaining something broken. He kissed her forehead. I'll take those odds. That night, Alara stood on the fortress walls, looking out at the frontier. Somewhere out there, Darius was plotting. Other packs were watching. The old ways were fighting back against the new. But here, in Blackridge, change was taking root. Warriors laughed in the training yards. Children played without fear. The healers' quarters glowed warm with lamplight and the quiet sounds of wolves finding peace. And beside her stood Ronan, no longer the isolated king carrying darkness alone, but her partner, her mate, her equal in every way that mattered. What are you thinking? He asked. That 3 months ago I was chained and starving, and now I'm standing on a fortress wall planning a revolution. Alara leaned into him. It's surreal. Good surreal or bad surreal? Good. Terrifying. Both. She turned to face him. What about you? Any regrets about bonding with the troublemaker? Only that I didn't do it sooner. Ronan's hands framed her face. You've given me something I thought I'd lost. Hope. Purpose. A reason to build instead of just survive. We're going to have to fight for this. You know that. I know. His smile was fierce. And I'm ready. They kissed under the moonlight, two wolves who'd been broken in different ways finding wholeness in each other. Around them, the fortress hummed with new life, with possibility. The frontier was changing, and they were leading the way. The attack came 6 weeks later, in the dead hours before dawn, when the world was caught between darkness and light. Alara woke to the sound of warning bells, and Ronan already moving, pulling on clothes and weapons with practiced efficiency. Through the bond, she felt his alertness spike into something sharp and predatory. What's happening? She was on her feet, reaching for her healer's pack out of instinct. Border breach. Multiple hostiles. Ronan buckled his sword belt. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Fenrir. Like hell! Alara was already dressed, slinging her pack over her shoulder. If there's fighting, there'll be wounded. I'm coming. Alara. We don't have time to argue. She grabbed his hand, squeezed once. Together, remember? His expression shifted from protective to resigned. Stay behind me. And if I tell you to run, you run. Same to you. They ran through corridors already filling with warriors, everyone moving with purpose toward their assigned positions. The training they'd implemented over the last weeks showed no panic, no chaos, just coordinated response. Fenrir met them at the main gate, his face grim. It's Darius. He's got maybe 40 wolves, all of them outcasts and exiles. They breached the east wall. Casualties? Ronan demanded. 3 wounded, none critical, but Alara, there's something else. Fenrir's voice dropped. He's asking for you specifically. Says he'll withdraw if you come out and face him. It's a trap, Ronan said immediately. Obviously. Alara's mind raced. But he'll keep attacking until I show. Better to control when and where it happens. Absolutely not. Ronan, I said no. His hand found her arm, gripped tight enough to hurt. You're not going out there to be bait. Then what? We let him tear apart everything we've built because I'm too scared to face him? Alara pulled free. That's not who I am. That's not who we are. Through the bond, she felt his fear war with his pride, his need to protect her battling against his knowledge that she was right. If you go, he said finally, I go with you. That's what he wants, to draw you out, make you lose control again. Then he'll be disappointed. Ronan's eyes met hers, and she saw the change in him, the integration she'd helped create, the beast and the man working together instead of fighting. Because I'm not the same wolf I was 6 weeks ago. They emerged from the fortress together, Fenrir and 24 warriors flanking them. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. On the ridge beyond the training yard, Darius waited with his assembled force. He looked different, thinner, harder. The exile had carved away everything soft, leaving only sharp edges and bitter resolve. Brother, Darius called out, and the little healer who thinks she can change the world. How touching. What do you want, Darius? Ronan's voice carried across the distance. What I've always wanted, Blackridge, the throne, everything you stole from me. Darius descended the ridge slowly. But I'm willing to make a trade. I'm listening. Her, Darius pointed at Alara, the witch who corrupted you. Give her to me and I'll leave. You can keep your soft little kingdom. I'll take my wolves and go. No, Ronan said flatly. I wasn't asking. Darius's hand moved and something was dragged forward. Alara's breath stopped. Mira, the little girl with the broken wrist, bound and terrified but alive. You bastard, Alara breathed. Insurance, Darius said cheerfully. I know you, healer. You can't stand to see anyone suffer, especially not children. He put his hand on Mira's shoulder, and the girl whimpered. So here's the deal. You come with me, I let her go. You refuse, and I start breaking things until you change your mind. Ronan's entire body had gone rigid. If you hurt her, you'll what? Attack me? Go ahead, but you'll have to get through 40 wolves first, and by the time you do, this little one will be in pieces. It was a perfect trap. Attack and risk Mira's life. Surrender Alara and lose everything. Either way, Darius won. Unless they changed the game entirely. Okay, Alara said. Alara, no, Ronan started. I'll come with you. She stepped forward, hands visible and empty. But you let Mira go first, and you withdraw your forces. Those are my terms. Darius studied her for a long moment. You think you're clever, think you can trick me somehow. I think I'm tired of watching you hurt people to prove a point. Alara kept walking, closing the distance between them. So yes, I'll trade myself for her. Because that's what actual strength looks like. She felt Ronan through the bond, his fury, his fear, his absolute trust that she had a plan. She hoped that trust wasn't misplaced. Let her go, Alara said, stopping 10 feet from Darius. He smiled, shoved Mira forward. The girl ran, and Fenrir caught her, pulling her to safety. Your turn, Darius said. Alara walked forward until she stood directly in front of him. Up close, she could see the madness in his eyes. The exile had broken something fundamental in him. You know what's funny? Darius grabbed her arm, yanked her close. I thought killing you would be satisfying, but now I think I'll keep you. Break you slowly. Make you watch while I tear down everything you built. You won't get the chance, Alara said quietly. Why? Because your mate will save you? Darius laughed. He's surrounded, outnumbered. By the time Alara's hand shot up, pressing against his chest. and she poured her gift into him. Not healing. The opposite. She'd learned something in the weeks of treating injuries, of understanding how bodies worked. Healing was about restoring balance, fixing damage. But that same knowledge could be weaponized. She could feel every injury Darius had ever sustained, every scar, every old break, every torn muscle. And she made them all hurt at once. Darius screamed, dropping to his knees. Alara stepped back as he convulsed, his body remembering every wound, every pain he'd ever endured. That's for everyone you've hurt, she said. Every child you broke. Every warrior you pushed past their limit. Every life you treated as expendable. Kill her, Darius gasped at his wolves, but they didn't move. Why aren't you? Darius looked up, saw his forces standing frozen. Then he saw what was behind them. Wolves, hundreds of them, Shadowfen, Ironpaw, even some Silverpine warriors, all of them standing with Blackridge. The Shadowfen leader stepped forward. We had a suspicion you'd try something like this, Darius, so we prepared. This is my fight, Darius snarled. No, this is our frontier. The Ironpaw leader joined her. And we're tired of wolves like you poisoning it. Ronan walked to Alara's side, his hand finding hers. It's over, Darius. You have no support, no pack, no leverage. I have 40 wolves. You have 40 exiles who followed you because they had nowhere else to go. Ronan's voice was almost gentle. But we're offering them something different, a place in the new order, a chance to be part of something better. He addressed Darius's forces directly. Anyone who wants asylum in Blackridge or Shadowfen or Ironpaw, step forward now. No judgment, no punishment, just a fresh start. For a moment, nothing happened. Then one of Darius's wolves moved. Then another. Within seconds, all 40 had walked past their former leader to stand with the Alliance. Darius knelt alone on the frozen ground, abandoned by everyone. You've lost, Alara said, not because we were stronger, but because we offered something worth fighting for. This isn't over, Darius spat. I'll come back. No, you won't. Ronan's voice carried finality. Because you're being exiled from the frontier entirely. Cross any pack's border, and you're fair game. The Alliance is unanimous on this. The Shadowfen leader nodded. We're done tolerating wolves who choose cruelty over community. You can't do this, Darius protested, but his voice had lost its edge. I'm Blackridge. You're nothing, Ronan said quietly. You were given every chance to choose differently, to be better, and you chose violence every single time. He paused. I loved you once, brother, but that person is long gone. If he was ever really there at all. Fenrir and two others hauled Darius to his feet, began dragging him toward the border. He fought, cursed, made threats that rang increasingly hollow. Then he was gone, and the frontier fell silent. Alara sagged against Ronan, adrenaline draining away to leave exhaustion in its wake. Is it really over? It's really over. He wrapped his arms around her, and through the bond she felt his relief, his pride, his absolute love. You were incredible. I was terrified. That's what made it brave. He kissed the top of her head. Using your gift as a weapon. I didn't know you could do that. Neither did I. Alara looked at her hands, still shaking slightly. But I knew every injury he'd ever had, every place he'd been hurt. It was just a matter of remembering them for him. Remind me never to piss you off. Despite everything, Alara laughed. Too late. The assembled packs began to disperse, the Shadowfen and Ironpaw leaders promising to return in a week to formalize the alliance. The former exiles were integrated into various packs, given assignments and welcomed with cautious optimism. And Blackridge began to settle back into its new normal. 3 months later, Alara stood in what had been the old execution chamber, now converted into a training facility for healers. 15 wolves sat in a semicircle, taking notes as she demonstrated proper wound treatment. The key is understanding what the body wants to do anyway, she explained, healing a practice injury on a volunteer. You're not forcing it, you're just helping it along. What if the injury is too severe? One student asked. Then you stabilize and get them to someone more experienced. Alara released the volunteer's arm, now fully healed. There's no shame in knowing your limits. Better to ask for help than make things worse. After the class, she found Ronan waiting outside, leaning against the stone wall with the kind of casual grace that still made her heart skip. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Good. They're learning fast." Alara took his offered hand. 3 of them will be ready for field placement next month. "That's incredible." He pulled her close as they walked. "We've got news from Silverpine. They've implemented the full restructuring. Debt system is gone. Children's training has been reformed. They're asking if we can send more healers. We can spare 2, maybe 3. Already arranged it." Ronan's tone was satisfied. "Also, Stormcrest sent an envoy. Seems they're finally ready to talk." Alara stopped walking. "All of them? The entire Frontier Alliance?" "Not yet, but close." He turned to face her. "What you started here, what we built together, it's spreading faster than anyone expected. Wolves are choosing community over cruelty, healing over hurting." "We're changing the world," Alara said softly. "You're changing the world. I'm just along for the ride." "Liar." She kissed him, quick and fierce. "We're doing this together." They continued walking through the fortress that had become home, past training yards where warriors sparred and laughed, past the healing quarters where injured wolves received treatment without shame, past children playing without the shadow of fear. Everything was different now. Better. Not perfect. Nothing was ever perfect, but healing in ways that mattered. That night, under the full moon, the entire pack gathered for a ceremony. Elder Morna, recovered from Darius's attack and more formidable than ever, stood on the platform where trials had once been held. "Tonight," she announced, "we formalize what has already become truth. Alara Voss is no longer a debt payment, no longer an outsider. Tonight, she becomes what she has always been in her heart." Alara stepped forward, Ronan at her side. "Do you accept the responsibilities of Pack?" Morna asked. "To protect, to serve, to build something greater than yourself?" "I do," Alara said clearly. "Do you accept the bonds of mate and equal, to stand beside your king not as property but as partner?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by time and tradition, I name you Alara Voss Kael, Queen of Black Ridge, healer of the frontier. And the wolf who taught us all that true strength lies not in enduring pain, but in having the courage to heal it." The pack erupted in cheers. Ronan pulled her into his arms, kissed her in front of everyone, and through the bond, Alara felt his joy like sunlight. "Queen," he murmured against her lips. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Amazing. Right." She pulled back to look at him. "How does it feel to have a queen who won't do what she's told?" "Like everything I never knew I needed." His smile was brilliant. "Though I should warn you, the council meetings are incredibly boring. I've sat through your training reports. I think I can handle it." They spent the rest of the evening celebrating, eating, drinking, accepting congratulations from packmates who'd become friends, from allies who'd become family. Mira presented Alara with a flower crown made of winter blooms, her young face serious with importance. "You saved me," the little girl said. "Now I'm going to be a healer too, so I can save people like you did." Alara's eyes burned with tears. "You'll be amazing." "I know." Mira grinned, gap-toothed and confident, then ran off to join the other children. "She's got your attitude," Ronan observed. "Poor thing." As midnight approached, they slipped away from the celebration, finding their way to the fortress walls. Below, Black Ridge spread out in all directions, torches burning, life thriving, hope growing in places where once there had been only pain. "Tell me what you're thinking," Ronan said, pulling her against his chest. "I'm thinking about the girl who arrived here 3 months ago, chained, starving, expecting to die." Alara leaned into his warmth. She couldn't have imagined this. "What part?" "Any of it. The changes, the alliance. You." She turned in his arms. "Definitely you. I'm the lucky one." His hands framed her face. "You took a broken king and a broken kingdom and showed us we could be whole. You weren't broken. You were just fighting the wrong battle." "Maybe," he kissed her forehead, "but you helped me see that." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the moon track across the sky. Somewhere in the fortress, the celebration continued. Somewhere on the frontier, other packs were beginning their own transformations. And somewhere, everywhere, the old ways were giving ground to something new. What comes next? Alara asked. What do you want to come next? She considered. I want to expand the healer program, train more wolves, maybe establish satellite clinics in allied territories. Her voice gained enthusiasm. And I want to keep pushing, keep showing that there's another way to be strong. Done. Ronan's tone was certain. What else? I want to wake up next to you every morning, fight beside you every day. Build something that outlasts us both. Now that, he said, I can definitely arrange. He kissed her under the moonlight, slow and deep and full of promises. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alara saw her future reflected in his silver eyes. Not the future she'd imagined as a scared girl being traded at a border. Not the future of survival in pain and endurance, but something better, something chosen. A future built on trust, partnership, and the radical belief that strength didn't mean breaking. It meant healing what others would destroy. I love you, she said. The words came easily now, natural as breathing. I love you too. Ronan's voice was rough with emotion. My queen, my mate, my healer who saved the broken king. I didn't save you. We saved each other. Even better. They stayed on the walls until dawn began to break, painting the frontier in shades of gold and possibility. Below, Blackridge stirred to life, wolves beginning their day in a kingdom that valued strength and compassion in equal measure. And at the heart of it all stood two wolves who'd found each other in the darkest circumstances and chosen to build light. Alara thought about the journey that had brought her here, the chains, the fear, the moment when Ronan's eyes had met hers at the border and something ancient had recognized something eternal. She'd been traded as a debt payment. She'd become a queen. But more than that, more important than titles or power or alliances, she'd become herself, fully, completely, without apology. And in doing so, she'd helped an entire frontier do the same. Ready to face the day? Ronan asked as the sun crested the horizon. With you? Alara squeezed his hand. Always. They descended from the walls together, king and queen, partners in every way that mattered. The fortress welcomed them with warm light and familiar sounds, children laughing, warriors training, healers working, life continuing in all its messy, beautiful complexity. This was what they'd built. Not perfection, but progress. Not an ending, but a beginning that would ripple outward for generations. Alara had arrived at Blackridge expecting death. Instead, she'd found life, purpose, love, and the strength to prove that the hardest thing in the world, the bravest thing, wasn't enduring pain. It was choosing to heal. And in that choice, in that radical act of compassion in a cruel world, she'd changed everything. The frontier would never be the same. Neither would she. And that, Alara thought as Ronan pulled her close and the pack surrounded them with welcome, was exactly the point.